Before heaven and hell became familiar words, before angels and demons filled the imagination of later faiths, an ancient prophet looked at the world and saw a war beneath reality. Not a war of armies, but a war of truth against the lie. What made Zoroaster dangerous was not that he spoke of darkness. It was that he told human beings they were not spectators of the cosmic battle, but participants in it. This archive is not about a distant prophet sealed inside a forgotten religion. It is about an idea so disruptive that it quietly reshaped the spiritual imagination of half the world, moving through borrowed corridors, wearing borrowed names, arriving inside traditions that never acknowledged where it came from. The danger of Zoroaster was not political, not military, and not even theological in the narrow sense. It was moral. It was the kind of danger that arrives when someone tells you that you are free, and that is the wound that runs beneath the history. Freedom sounds like a gift until you understand what it demands. When a teaching tells you that the universe is watching your choices, that truth and falsehood are not abstractions, but forces you either serve or betray with every act of your life, the comfortable distance between you and reality collapses. Zoroaster did not offer a religion of ritual comfort. He offered a religion of radical responsibility, and that has always been the most unsettling thing a prophet can do. Step back now, far beyond the familiar world, into the ancient landscape of the Iranian plateau, where wind moved across grassland, where fire was not a metaphor, but a living presence at the center of sacred life, where the sky felt enormous and the questions it raised felt older than language. This is the world from which Zoroaster emerged, a world of cattle herders and warriors, of seasonal rituals and sky gods, of a spiritual order that had functioned for generations without asking the questions he was about to ask. The archive opens here, in the silence before the disruption. The world into which Zoroaster was born, likely somewhere in the second millennium, before the Common Era, though the dates remain genuinely debated among scholars, was a world that understood the sacred in terms of power, exchange, and cosmic order. The ancient Iranian religious landscape was populated with divine beings called the Ahuras and the Devas, forces of varying character whose favor could be sought through sacrifice and whose anger could be averted through ritual. This was not a world without spiritual seriousness. It was a world where seriousness meant maintaining the right relationship between the human community and the powers that controlled nature, season, water, fire, and the movement of time. Sacrifice was the grammar of this ancient religion. Through the correct performance of ritual, the priests held the fragile fabric of cosmic order in place. The world was understood to rest on a delicate balance, and that balance required constant maintenance. The ritual specialist, the priest, the keeper of the sacred fire, held enormous authority because the community depended on him to mediate between human need and divine power. Disrupting this system was not merely a theological disagreement. It was an act that threatened the perceived stability of the world itself. Yet beneath the surface of this ordered ritual cosmos, something was restless. The ancient world, for all its spiritual seriousness, had not yet found a way to account for the moral texture of human experience in a fully satisfying way. Why did the wicked prosper? Why did the righteous suffer? Why did truth seem to lose so often in a world governed by powers whose favor could apparently be purchased through the right ceremony, these were not abstract philosophical questions. They were the lived anguish of people watching violence, injustice, and deception go unpunished, and they created a spiritual hunger that ritual alone could not feed. There is a question that lives at the center of every serious religious tradition, and it is this: is the universe morally structured, or is it indifferent? Does it matter at some deep and final level whether a person chooses truth or deception, compassion or cruelty, light or darkness, or are these distinctions merely human preferences, meaningful perhaps within a community, but ultimately irrelevant to the vast and silent machinery of existence? This question is not modern. It is among the oldest questions the human soul has ever carried, and it was burning in the ancient Iranian world long before Zoroaster gave it an answer. The hunger beneath the history was the hunger for moral meaning. Human beings can endure enormous suffering if they believe the suffering is not random, not wasted, not simply the product of an indifferent cosmos rolling forward without memory or justice. What they find far more difficult to endure is the possibility that goodness leaves no trace, that truth makes no difference, that the universe does not notice whether a person lives with integrity or with deception. Zoroaster arrived at the precise moment when this hunger was sharpest, and he brought with him a vision that answered it in a way that no one in that world had dared to articulate before. The break, when it came, was not a gradual reform. It carried the quality of a rupture. What the Gathas, the oldest hymns attributed to Zoroaster himself, reveal is a mind that had looked at the inherited religious world and seen something that could not be unseen. The Devas, those ancient divine beings whose rituals were central to the tradition he inherited, were reinterpreted. What had once been understood as powers deserving worship was now seen through a different lens, one that sorted spiritual reality not by power alone, but by moral alignment. The question Zoroaster was effectively asking was not merely which being is stronger, but which being is true. This reorganization was seismic. It did not simply add a new god to the existing pantheon or introduce a new ritual to supplement the old ones. It proposed a new architecture of reality, one in which the fundamental division was not between the human world and the divine world, not between the ordered cosmos and the wild chaos beyond its edges, but between truth and the lie, between what Zoroaster called Asha and Druja. These two principles were not equal in an ultimate sense, because in his vision, truth would finally prevail. But in the present age, they were locked in a genuine struggle, and every being in existence, including every human being, was being asked to choose a side. The figure of Zoroaster, known also by his Greek name Zarathustra, moves through history in a way that is more archetypal than biographical. The details of his life are genuinely uncertain. Ancient sources disagree about when he lived, where he was born, and which community first received his teaching. What the tradition preserves is not a detailed historical record, but something more essential: the image of a prophet who encountered the divine not through inherited ritual, but through a direct and overwhelming inner experience. He is remembered not as a reformer who tinkered with existing structures, but as someone who received a vision and found that vision made the world impossible to see as it had been seen before. The Gathas, The ancient hymns that scholarship generally accepts as Zoroaster's own voice are among the oldest religious texts composed in any Iranian language. They are not easy reading. They are compressed, dense with imagery, and written in an archaic dialect that even specialists find challenging. But within them, one encounters something unmistakable, a person speaking from a place of profound spiritual urgency, addressing the divine directly, wrestling with the same questions that would torment religious thinkers for millennia to come. Why does falsehood appear to succeed? Where does truth find its ultimate shelter? What is a person of genuine insight to do when the world around them appears to prefer the lie? What makes Zoroaster resonate across the centuries is not any single biographical detail, but this quality of the wound he carried and the question he refused to abandon. He appears in the archive not as a museum piece, but as a living intensity, a voice that identified something real about the structure of moral experience and would not be quieted by comfortable answers. Every tradition that later spoke of light and darkness, of truth and deception as forces with cosmic weight, of judgment as the moment when the soul must finally account for what it served, carries in some form the imprint of what this ancient voice first articulated in the hymns of the Avesta. The central revelation of Zoroaster was this: the universe is morally alive, not merely powerful, not merely ancient, not merely vast, but morally alive in the sense that truth and falsehood are its deepest organizing principles, and the soul of every human being is positioned, whether it recognizes it or not, in relationship to that division. Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord, the divine principle Zoroaster placed at the center of his vision, was not simply the strongest of the gods. He was the one whose nature was inseparable from truth, from Asha, from the right order of existence. To approach this divine presence was not merely to seek power or protection. It was to align oneself with the principle that holds reality together at its deepest level. And across from Ahura Mazda stood Angra Mainyu, the destructive spirit, not as an equal and eternal rival in a philosophical sense, but as the force whose nature was the corruption of truth, the active promotion of the lie, the energy that moved through the world as deception, violence, and the degradation of what was good. What Zoroaster revealed to his listeners was that this conflict was not happening somewhere distant and inaccessible. It was happening here, in the choices made in the course of an ordinary day, in the words spoken or withheld, in the treatment of animals, of the poor, of the truthful person surrounded by those who preferred comfortable falsehood. The cosmic struggle had a local address, and that address was the human heart. What separated Zoroaster's vision from ordinary ritual religion was not simply the content of his theology, but the transformation it performed on the meaning of everyday life. In the older ritual world, the sacred and the ethical were not necessarily the same thing. A person could perform the correct ritual and remain morally corrupt. The gods demanded the right ceremony, the right sacrifice, the right priestly mediation. Whether you were honest in your dealings with your neighbor was a matter of social custom, tribal law, perhaps divine punishment if you overstepped certain boundaries, but it was not necessarily understood as a cosmic act with universal significance. Zoroaster collapsed that distinction. For him, the ethical was the cosmic, The choice to speak truth rather than falsehood was not merely a social virtue, it was an act of alignment with the fundamental structure of reality, a contribution to the victory of Ahura Mazda, a genuine participation in the ancient war that was shaping the direction of existence itself. This meant that every person, not only the priest, not only the warrior, not only the ruler, but every ordinary human being who rose each morning and faced the day's choices, was a sacred actor in a sacred drama. That democratization of spiritual significance was not a small revision. It was a revolution. Zoroaster's teaching did not arrive into a welcoming world. The tradition he was reforming was not simply an intellectual framework that could be quietly adjusted without consequence. It was the architecture of social order. The priests who maintained the Daiva's rituals were not merely religious specialists. They were holders of power, keepers of legitimacy, the people through whom communities maintained their relationship with the forces they believed governed weather, harvest, war, and survival. When Zoroaster began to speak of these beings as morally corrupt, as servants of the lie rather than powers deserving worship, he was not offering a theological opinion. He was dismantling something that people depended on for the most basic sense of security. The resistance he encountered appears to echo through the Gathas themselves, where the prophet speaks of those who reject him, who mock his vision, who cling to the old ways because the old ways are familiar and because the new vision asks too much. He speaks of priests who promote the Daivas and warriors who support them, of communities where truth speakers are marginalized and the promoters of falsehood thrive. What emerges from these hymns is not the image of a triumphant reformer sweeping effortlessly through an eager world, but of a person who knew what it felt like to be isolated in a community that preferred the comfortable lie to the difficult truth. The wound in the prophet is visible in the words he left behind. The social disruption was real, a religion that taught that every human choice had cosmic significance, that the old rituals were no guarantee of divine favor if they served the wrong spiritual allegiance, that truth and falsehood were the deepest categories of reality, rather than power and weakness, threatened not only the priests, but the warriors, the nobles, the entire structure of a world where status was justified by ritual access and divine favor could be purchased rather than earned through moral alignment. Zoroaster was not simply a spiritual reformer. He was a social danger because the idea he carried had consequences that reached far beyond theology. The teaching was dangerous in a way that goes deeper than political disruption or priestly rivalry. It was dangerous because of what it placed inside each person. When Zoroaster's vision is followed to its inner logic, it becomes clear that no human being can remain neutral. There is no comfortable middle ground in a cosmos organized around the choice between truth and the lie. Every act, every word, every intention carries weight. Every morning that a person rises and moves through the world, they are either contributing to the order of truth or feeding the energy of deception. The universe, in this vision, is not an audience. It is a court, and the soul is always already presenting its case. That weight is not easy to carry. For many people, a religion of ritual is not chosen out of laziness or cynicism. It is chosen because it offers a manageable relationship with the sacred, one where the demands are specific, where the boundaries are clear, where you know what is required and what is permitted. Zoroaster's teaching removed that manageability. It said that the demand was total, that the sacred had entered the ethical in an inescapable way, that there was no ritual that could substitute for the orientation of the soul. This was not comforting, it was terrifying in the specific and serious way that genuine spiritual depth is always terrifying. It asks you to be accountable for something you cannot delegate. Before we go deeper, I want to ask you something. If you believe that every choice you make, no matter how small, was a genuine act of participation in a cosmic struggle between truth and falsehood, between light and its absence, would that belief make your life feel more meaningful, or would it make existence feel unbearably heavy? Sit with that question for a moment. Then, if you are moved to share what you find when you look at it honestly, leave your reflection in the comments below. What you discover there may matter more than any answer this archive can offer. 4.4. The Descent Beneath the Surface. But let us descend now beneath the surface of the historical conflict, because what Zoroaster was touching was not only a political dispute between old priests and a new prophet. He was touching something that lives in the psychology of every person who has ever looked at the world and wondered whether goodness is a real force or merely a fragile human preference in an indifferent universe. The conflict he named in cosmic terms was a conflict that has never resolved itself in the human soul. It is the conflict between the part of us that wants to believe our choices matter and the part of us that fears they may not. That is the wound beneath the doctrine, and it is as alive now as it was on the ancient Iranian plateau. At the center of Zoroaster's vision stands a concept of extraordinary power, Asha. It is often translated as truth or as righteousness or as the right order of existence, but no single English word fully captures what it means. Asha is the principle by which fire burns upward rather than down, by which water flows toward the sea, by which the seasons return in their proper sequence, by which a spoken promise binds a person to their word. It is both cosmic law and moral law, and in Zoroaster's understanding, they are the same thing. The universe has a deep grain, a direction, an orientation toward order and truth, and the soul that aligns itself with that grain is participating in something real, something that has consequences beyond the span of a single life. Standing against Asha is Druj, the lie. And Druj is also far more than a simple word for dishonesty. It is the force of distortion, the energy that breaks what should be whole, that corrupts what should be pure, that substitutes appearance for reality and comfort for truth. Druj is not merely a bad habit. In Zoroaster's vision, it is an active orientation, a way of moving through existence that feeds the destructive spirit and contributes to the degradation of the world. And the human soul, in its daily life, its ordinary decisions, its choices about what to say and what to withhold, what to protect and what to sacrifice, is constantly in relationship with both of these forces, being shaped by whichever one it feeds. Judgment in Zoroaster's teaching was not an arbitrary divine verdict delivered by a capricious God who could be appeased by the right offering. It was the inevitable disclosure of what the soul had actually served during its life. The Chinvat Bridge, the bridge of judgment that appears in later Zoroastrian cosmology, was understood as the moment when the soul's true nature became fully visible, when what had been chosen in the hidden corners of daily life was finally revealed in its full spiritual weight. This was not punishment in the simple punitive sense. It was truth. The soul encountered itself exactly as it was, and the world it entered after death reflected with perfect accuracy what it had genuinely been in the world it was leaving. Fire appears throughout the Zoroastrian tradition not as a decoration or an arbitrary ritual element, but as the living symbol of Asha itself. Fire burns upward. It gives light and heat without consuming itself in a merely destructive way. It reveals what is hidden in darkness. It purifies what is brought near to it. In the sacred fires of the temples, the community was not merely performing a ceremony. They were maintaining a visible presence of the principle of truth in the midst of the human world. A reminder that Asha was not a concept to be debated, but a living reality to be tended, protected, and fed with care, the way a flame requires constant attention if it is not to be extinguished. Light and darkness in this tradition carry a meaning that is not simply visual or meteorological. They are orientations of the soul. To live in the light of Asha is not to be always comfortable or always successful in the world's terms. It is to maintain an interior alignment with truth, to refuse the small and large deceptions that Druja offers as easier paths, to remain oriented toward what is real even when what is false would serve the immediate interest more efficiently. Darkness in this symbolic understanding is not the absence of knowledge alone. It is the presence of a distorted interior, a soul that has chosen to serve the lie and finds itself progressively less capable of perceiving what is real. The symbolic architecture of Zoroaster's vision was not designed to be observed from a distance. It was designed to be inhabited. The fire at the center of the sacred community was also meant to be understood as the fire at the center of the self, the flame of conscience, the inner capacity to distinguish truth from falsehood, to feel the weight of a choice before making it, and to understand that this capacity was itself sacred, a gift from the wise Lord, a piece of the divine nature implanted in the human soul. To tend the inner fire was to participate in the cosmic struggle at its most intimate level, in the silence of one's own awareness, before any word was spoken or any action taken. Here is the hidden turn that Zoroaster's teaching carries, the one that moves beyond the historical and the theological and into something that belongs to every person regardless of the tradition they were born into. If truth is a living principle, and if the soul's alignment with truth is the deepest form of spiritual participation available to a human being, then the most dangerous act is not violent rebellion against a religious system. It is the quiet, daily choice to prefer a comfortable falsehood over a difficult truth. The lie that Zoroaster warned against is not only the lie spoken to a neighbor. It is the lie told to oneself, the self-deception that allows a person to look away from what they know and call that looking away wisdom or peace. Every person, in every age, in every cultural and religious setting, faces a version of the choice that Zoroaster placed at the center of existence. Not the choice between good and evil in some theatrical and obvious sense, where the right answer is clear before the choice is made, but the subtler choice, made daily, made in silence, made in the gap between what a person knows and what they are willing to act on, whether to serve truth or to serve the more comfortable version of reality that the lie constructs around the self like a comfortable and slowly suffocating room. The prophet named this choice. He placed it at the center of the cosmos. and he said that the universe notices the answer even when no one else does. For those who genuinely received Zoroaster's teaching not as a new ritual system, but as the vision it was intended to be, the experience was one of profound reorientation. Life did not become simpler. It became more serious in a way that was ultimately not crushing, but clarifying. Every day was now a landscape of genuine significance. The person you chose to help or to ignore, the truth you chose to speak or to withhold, the deception you chose to expose or to allow for the sake of convenience, all of these became spiritually weighted. Not in a way that produced constant anxiety, because the tradition also spoke of hope and the ultimate victory of Asha, but in a way that made even the most ordinary moment feel connected to something larger than the individual life. The community that formed around this vision understood itself as participants in a sacred task. They were not simply worshipers waiting for divine favor. They were, in the language of the tradition, co-workers with Ahura Mazda, beings whose daily choices in the material world contributed in a real way to the renovation of existence, to what later Zoroastrian theology would call the Frashokareti, the final restoration of all things to their true order. This was an identity of extraordinary dignity and extraordinary weight. It meant that the ordinary person, the farmer, the craftsperson, the mother, the herdsman, was not peripheral to the cosmic drama. They were essential to it. Their choices were the drama. In the world before Zoroaster's teaching took hold, the soul was largely understood as a being subject to fate, to the will of gods, to the forces of cosmic order and chaos that moved far above and beyond individual human control. You performed the rituals, you honored the powers, you hoped for favor and feared for punishment. But the deep architecture of the universe was not something you participated in. It was something that happened to you. You were a recipient of cosmic forces, not an agent within them. This is not a dismissal of the ancient world's spiritual seriousness, but it is an honest description of the relationship it offered between the human soul and the sacred order. After the teaching, the soul occupied a radically different position in the landscape of existence. It was no longer simply a recipient. It was a participant, a contributor, an agent whose choices had genuine cosmic significance. This was not the inflated egocentrism that sometimes masquerades as spiritual development in the modern world. It was the opposite of ego, because the soul's significance came not from its own importance, but from its alignment with something infinitely larger than itself. The soul mattered because Asha mattered, because truth was the principle holding reality together, and the soul's choice to serve truth was a genuine act of participation in the deepest structure of what is real. That shift from recipient to participant may be the most significant inner transformation that any teaching can offer. The before and after of the soul in Zoroaster's vision was not simply a change in belief, it was a change in identity. Before, a being navigating a morally indifferent universe with ritual tools. After, a being whose every thought, word, and deed was woven into the living fabric of cosmic truth. The person who internalized this vision could not look at their own choices the same way again. The small deceptions became visible as what they were. The moments of genuine truthfulness took on a luminosity they had not possessed before, and the question of what one was actually serving with the orientation of one's life became not a philosophical puzzle, but the most urgent practical question a person could face. The world of the 21st century is not, on the surface, very similar to the ancient Iranian plateau. But the hunger that Zoroaster was addressing has not changed. We live in an age of extraordinary moral confusion, where the categories of truth and falsehood are routinely contested, where the very concept of objective moral reality is frequently dismissed as naive, where the pressure to choose comfort over truth, convenience over integrity, and the appearance of goodness over its actual practice is as intense as it has ever been in human history. In that world, a teaching that says the universe is morally alive, that truth is a real force and deception is a real force, and that your alignment with one or the other has genuine and lasting consequences, does not feel like archaeology. It feels like a live question. The reason Zoroaster still speaks is that he refused to accept the most corrosive spiritual idea any age can produce. The idea that nothing truly matters because the universe does not notice. He looked at that void, that silent indifference that human experience sometimes seems to confirm. And he said something different. He said that beneath the surface of an apparently chaotic world, there was a war of truth, and that the human soul was not an accident wandering through that war, but a participant whose choices were genuine contributions to its outcome. Whether one accepts the specific theological framework he offered, that voice, that refusal to surrender the moral significance of human existence, carries a wisdom that time has not exhausted. Zoroaster's ideas did not remain sealed inside a single tradition, and this is perhaps the most remarkable aspect of his historical significance. The concepts he articulated, the cosmic struggle between truth and falsehood, the soul's judgment after death, the role of angels and adversarial spirits in the moral architecture of the universe, the hope for a final renovation of existence when truth would prevail completely, all of these moved outward from the Iranian religious world and entered the bloodstream of later traditions in ways that the traditions themselves did not always acknowledge. Scholars have traced what appear to be significant points of contact between Zoroastrian thought and the development of Second Temple Judaism, and through that contact with the angelology, the eschatology, and the cosmic dualism of early Christianity. The concepts that billions of people later took for granted, heaven and hell, as real destinations for the soul, a final judgment where the truth of a life is disclosed, the existence of a powerful adversarial spirit working against the divine order, the hope for a resurrection and a transformed world. All of these can be traced, at least in part, to the spiritual revolution that Zoroaster initiated. He did not create these ideas in a vacuum, and the traditions that inherited them transformed them significantly in their own contexts. But the architecture of moral cosmic drama that he first articulated on the ancient Iranian plateau became the hidden skeleton of a vast portion of humanity's religious imagination. His ideas outlived his empire, outlived his language, and outlived every political structure that carried his name forward. We began in the silence before the disruption, in a world where ritual held the cosmos in place, and the soul was a recipient rather than a participant. We encountered a prophet whose name carries the weight of centuries, but whose voice, when you hear it through the ancient hymns, is unmistakably personal, unmistakably wounded, unmistakably alive, with the urgency of someone who has seen something they cannot unsee. We followed the idea he carried through the resistance it generated, through the social danger it created, through the theological disruption it caused, into the deep interior of what it actually means to believe that truth is the fundamental structure of reality, and that every human soul is positioned in every moment of its existence in relationship to that truth. The journey this archive has taken is not simply a journey through ancient history, it is a journey through the question of what a human life is for. Zoroaster's answer, stripped of all its ancient cultural clothing, is this: a human life is for the practice of truth, and that practice is not peripheral to the cosmos, but woven into its deepest fabric. The prophet who articulated this was dangerous, not because he had an army, not because he wielded political power, not because he possessed forbidden knowledge that others wanted suppressed. He was dangerous because the idea he carried was true enough to change the way people understood themselves, and ideas that do that are always the most dangerous kind. We return now to the question with which this archive opened. Are human beings spectators of the cosmic battle, or are they participants in it? Zoroaster gave his answer 3,000 years ago, and the question has never been fully resolved since. Every tradition that inherited his thought wrestled with it. Every mystic who sat in the silence and felt the weight of their own choices against the scale of eternity was living inside that question. And if you have followed this journey to this point, you are not merely observing it from a safe distance. You are standing inside it too. The answer that Zoroaster's archive finally offers is not a theological proposition to be accepted or rejected. It is an invitation to a different kind of self-awareness. What made him dangerous, what made his teaching impossible for the comfortable world around him to absorb without disruption, was this: he made the invisible war personal. He said that the conflict between truth and falsehood was not happening somewhere beyond the human horizon. It was happening inside every human being, in the space between what they knew and what they were willing to live by, between the truth they could see and the lie they found easier to inhabit. The most dangerous prophet is not the one who points at external enemies. It is the one who points inward, toward the war that has always been closest to home. If this archive speaks to the part of you that still searches, that still believes ancient voices carry something worth hearing beneath the silence of centuries, then subscribe and return for the next manuscript. The archive holds many more forgotten prophets, buried texts, and hidden questions that have never stopped asking to be opened. The lone prophet stands somewhere in the ancient landscape, between a fire that burns with the principle of truth and a darkness that waits with infinite patience for the flame to be neglected. He has seen the war beneath reality. He has understood that the soul is not a passenger in that war, but a soldier of its own choosing. He has spoken, and the speaking has cost him something, as speaking the truth always does. And the tradition he left behind carried his vision forward through empires and languages and centuries until it arrived, in one form or another, inside traditions that shape the world you inhabit right now. You are standing in the same divide that Zoroaster stood in. not on the ancient plateau, not in the language of the Avesta, not within the specific theological world he inhabited, but in the same essential position, somewhere between truth and the comfortable lie, between the choice that aligns the soul with what is real and the choice that looks away. The archive does not tell you which way to turn, but it does remind you, as the prophet reminded his world long ago, that the choice is yours, that the universe is paying attention, and that the fire, if you tend it, does not go out.